We, over the last 20 years, have tended to minimize the importance of clinical observation and patient care, which I think is wrong. I think as long as we cure people, we can feel confident that we know what we're doing. I don't have any investment in wanting to gain anything from it. I just want to be able to tell my patients, gee, your vitamin D is 22. That might be linked to your sleep. Let's take it up tonight to a level of 62 and see if you sleep better. If you only remember one thing from this podcast, it's that you should never give vitamin D by itself. You should always take B50 with it and pay attention to your dosing.
Get ready for your unofficial dental hygiene podcast. These are the tales of two hygienists, one East Coast RDH and one West Coast hygienist. Listen as they tackle the profession of dental hygiene with humor and enthusiasm. Now, please join Michelle Strange and Andrew Johnston as they tell you a tale of two hygienists.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of A Tale of Two Hygienists, episode number 205. My name is Andrew.
And this is Michelle. Welcome back to another episode. We're glad you're here.
And it sounds like people are glad that we're doing this. I have a couple of reviews I wanted to start reading at the very, very beginning here, if that's okay with you.
Let's get into it.
So from October 25th, 2019, it's titled Saving the World.
One tooth at a time.
That's what the comment says, one smile at a time.
Oh, cute.
So thank you for that. The next one is from October 25th as well. It says, great podcast, 5 stars by Alinea B. And they say, as a dental assistant and current hygiene student, I love listening to this podcast. I love all the content shared, but I specifically love your student-focused roundtables. Yes.
Yay.
Thank you for sharing such a variety of content and keeping me excited to start this career, especially during my long commute to school. P.S. Andrew, you fellow Washingtonian, and hello from YVC hygiene student also. So yay.
More people from that area are listening. No one from South Carolina.
Well, to be fair, it is very rural out there. And so it is kind of a commute into the schools. So you're not living close to campus. So I think it's a testament to not only the students, because, wow, good for you for trying to find time to do more, but also the educators. And I've said this about our Washington educators. We're amazing educators, cutting edge. They're awesome. So
for sure.
I have one more, and it's another 5-star. It just says amazing by Team Estep or Team Step. I don't know, from November 13, 2019. Anyways, it says, thank you guys. I love the content and have learned so much from you and your guests. New products and new ideas have helped seed the passion for the industry as I work through dental hygiene school. Michelle and Andrew are a blast to listen to. Thank you for sharing your time.
Well, that was nice.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my goodness.
Good reviews, and we appreciate them. Everybody who listens, if you could take just a moment and go and rate and review, it's how people find us on iTunes a little easier. And, honestly, this has been a long-standing podcast, 4 years of just so much time. And so those are the little things that keep us going and fuel our fire and make us remind us why we do this for those bad days when we lose audio or something doesn't happen or go very well. We need the reminders.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. What do you want to talk about? You want to talk about some stuff?
Well, we should talk about the fact that we're coming off of Greater New York.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Look, I mean, I know we're supposed to be like jumped right into the clinical stuff and the interviews and all that, but can I say how much I hate waking up in the morning on the East Coast?
So I'm going to try to find empathy for you. I really am. I know that not everyone travels and jumps time zones like I do, and so many of our dental mentors. Give me a break.
No, I know. I just cannot, for the life of me, figure out why people like to have early morning meetings. And I guess ours wasn't really all that early. We were going to meet like at 9 o'clock or something like that.
Right. 6 a.m. for you, buddy.
Yeah, it's meeting it. Oh my gosh. I just hate it. Whatever. So this is a public service announcement to all of the dental conferences. Just move to the West Coast. All of them. And then we will be good to go.
No, because then what happens is everyone wants a nightcap. They want to go out and have drinks after dinner. And it's like, I mean, only 9 p.m. for you guys, but it's midnight for me. And
that's right. Yes. But then you get to sleep in the next day almost kind of for you.
No, because your body is on it. I wake up at 4 a.m. That's what happens. I wake up at 4 and it's no fun, but I understand it. I get it. It's hard to, but like you're 4 or 5 times a year that you might come over to the East Coast. I really need you to just suck it up.
I do need to quit being a wuss. And I'll try to do my best of not being wussy.
I mean, I think I just saw one of our speakers. I can't remember who it was. One that's always out. She was like 3 states, 3 time zones in 1 week. So
nope.
We can't complain.
Nope.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, I was here for 12 hours in this time zone. And then I moved to the next time. I'm like, no. Okay. So I saw an ad because they're always all the travel products are going to be focused towards me because I click on them all the time.
Yep.
And so they have the one where it's like you blow it up and then like you can lean forward on this travel pillow.
I've always wanted to know if that worked. And someone did buy it that I know. And they said it's not as fabulous as you want it to be.
And that may or may not be true. The one in particular I was looking at, you can also put your hands inside.
Yep. It's that one.
And you can have your device in there. So if you're watching a movie, because I fall asleep to movies, I turn the screen down.
Just look down on it.
I'm just like leaning forward. I have nothing going on. I'm just like leaning forward into everything. And then my screen's there. I think that would actually work really well for me.
I think it would probably work for you because of your height too.
Yeah. 6'1". I like leaning forward. Leaning to the side is not, or leaning back isn't really a thing.
Well, I'm just saying like my 5'3" frame to lean forward on that thing probably isn't going to be the same. Like
you're too short down.
Yeah. Like, let me go back to geometry, that angle.
Your acute angle versus my obtuse angle.
Yeah. It's just a little different. So I think yours would be more comfortable than, I think lower back pain would be my issue after some time.
Well, if that company would just sponsor all of our dental people's travels, that would be awesome.
We could do a little pilot study and see how it works.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be great.
Yeah. So if anyone has any contacts there, reach out. Let us know.
We do have some really fun pictures of you and I traveling, like eye mask, tape, mouths, and nose filters.
Disgusting.
And
yeah. That is hideous. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just did a podcast where I was like, I look like I've been straight up kidnapped when I go to sleep. It's really special. But
yeah.
Anywho, I know we're going to get through this because I'm going to yoga because I'm actually seeing patients tomorrow, which is I don't usually see patients on Mondays.
Monday, yeah.
Yeah, I usually see them on Wednesdays, but I'm traveling to a point, this would have been my 3rd week without seeing patients, and I just can't handle it. So I switched up my day.
Like you just can't.
I do.
You lose that touch, and you're like, no, I need them, they need me.
Yeah, and you know what? If you had told me that 7 years ago when I was like not in my best place as a hygienist, like really burned out from my practice and just struggling with, like I would, on my way to work, I was like, they're not going to get me down today. They're not going to get me down today. I'm just going to ignore it. I'm going to ignore it. I'm going to ignore it. And it was like out of the gate in the huddle, I was like, I effing hate all of you. You're the worst people on the face of the earth. And now I'm like, I can't go another week without seeing patients. But I found the nice little mix of travel, speaking, writing, podcasting.
We should do an episode on that sometime, by the way, of like, because I was there too. You were there. Several of us have been there, like just some sort of roundtable on like what finally got us out of that like craptitude feeling. Because yours is going to be different than mine and stuff.
Sure.
But we can talk about that another time, but I think we should do that.
I think so too. And I think it's also important to know that it ebbs and flows. Like, I think every few years, maybe you might outgrow the practice or your lifestyle changes, your needs change. Maybe you become a mom or a dad or something. But change is hard for a lot of people in our industry, as you could hear on the podcast with Corey. And yeah, so it's going to look different. And I don't think if you find that one office and you stay there for like 20 years, bless, you are better. Or no, you're just lucky, not better. You're just lucky.
Yeah.
You found that right fix. But yeah, I think a lot of us have been there. And very early on in this podcast, do you remember, I think this was at that first Smiles at Sea cruise that we went on, and we had a booth. We had a booth there right before, like in the hotel.
On land still.
On land. And we were telling anybody that was coming up and chatting with us about what a podcast is. And one person said something, and it has stuck with me since. And they were in a place where they were burned out. You could just feel it. Like I don't know why they came on this cruise. Maybe it was for fun, just a tax write-off. I don't think it was for CE, but they said, why would I want to listen to a podcast? I can't even stand to get through my day.
I do not recall that, but that makes a lot of sense. I feel like I've heard that since a few times. Yeah.
Right. And maybe you were somewhere, but I heard it and I was like, you're right. Why would anybody? And so I've always kind of kept that in the back of my head. Like, to me, it's the answer to a lot of problems. There's going to be an episode that that resonates with you in some way. And either it's like, you're right, this is a problem. I can't get right with it. I think I need to get out of this industry. Or it changes your perspective. And I truly believe education is what gets you out of a lot of things.
Oh, for sure.
A lot of moments in your life. If you could just educate and find the knowledge and the learner for life. So I don't know if that's right for everyone. But anywho, Greater New York.
Greater New York. It was good to see everybody. And it's a good conference. It was big. It took me all of the 2 days to finally get through all of the conference hall.
Yeah. But we enjoyed the trivia dent.
Amazing time.
Trivia. Yes.
Can I tell you that was, sorry to keep cutting you off. That was probably my favorite of all of the trivia dent events that I've been to. That's the third one, but still live is amazing. It was really highly engaged. Surprising. I love the leaderboard. I love everyone smack talking to everyone else. And it was just, but maybe that's just my competitive spirit coming out. And no, I did not win. I was like way down like at 6th or something like that.
Yeah, but you're crushing the online one.
Yeah, I am. I'm doing pretty good with that one.
So what we're talking about is Trivia Dent. That is a company that Dr. Tony Stefanu, who has been on the podcast, this is his brainchild. He was nice enough to bring me in on some of it. And together we are doing online trivia events and live trivia events. And so you can go sign up. It's $12 for the year, guys. It's not that much, but Andrew has won hundreds of dollars. And
it might actually be over $1,000 so far in like Amazon
really?
cards already. God, I think so. Because it was like 500 was one of them, and then like 200 and 200. Like it's been a lot.
Seriously, it's not like national board trivia, even though there are some sciencey questions and stuff. But it's if you're good at trivia and you want to test out what you know, you can go sign up and take a monthly quiz, and then we do a question of the day on Facebook. We do a Trivia Tuesday on Instagram, so you can test your knowledge there. And then every so often we have these live events. Those will grow as the company grows, where you can either challenge friends, have these live showdowns. We did a Jeopardy one. Just now we did like one with a leaderboard. It was really fun though. So thanks for all that came to Tony's networking event, which is another great thing about these trivia live events. It's great for networking and a few drinky drinks. So, that's always a plus.
Yeah.
And
no, it is.
Then, yeah. And also you missed this because you had to fly back home, but Mouthwatch had their Tele Awards, their Teledentistry Awards, and Angie Stone was a recipient. We love her. Congrats. She's been doing amazing things for quite some time. So it's great. She needs all the recognition. She's, crushing it with geriatric care and how we can help our elderly patients or people in the world. So congrats to all the winners, but one of our faves, Angie Stone.
I was kind of joking around with Edie beforehand. I was like, now, are you guys gonna do like a Michael Scott, like Dundee's version of this? Or is this like a for reals, like serious? Like it's gonna be serious. I'm like, all right.
It's serious because there's even
it's prestigious. It's nice.
And heartstrings pulled at? Like,
Yeah.
seriously, these people are making changes outside of the box. Like, they're reaching people, and it's impressive. And the stories, well, just a little watery eye.
If only we could record some of that stuff, Michelle, and share it with the rest of the people.
I'm sorry. What are you saying there?
I was just brainstorming ideas to get that information out to our listeners, who I'm sure would love to hear those stories too. But, it's hard to manufacture that when it's not in the moment.
Because we've done a podcast on teledentistry, actually a few in a roundtable just recently. So I'm certain that you are not shaming me for getting content or lack
I would
thereof
never
at this.
shame you for. I would never do that. That doesn't sound like me at all.
Yeah, it's so easy for you to jump on a plane and then tell me I need to work harder.
Keep working while I'm gone on the plane, by the way, as I get bumped up to. Never mind.
And before we get into this, we have a giveaway, y'all. A huge giveaway to one lucky winner. We're going to choose randomly, of course, on December 15th. And thank you so much to all the companies that donated. This is a lucky winner will get a giveaway valued at over $2,000. It's for patient education, all the things that you can use to educate and then send home with the patient so they can do better biofilm management at home. You're just going to go over to our website at tale2hygienist.com/giveaway or text ATOTH to 66866 and you'll enter to win that way. Well, let's get into this episode. You were not able to be there because we actually recorded this at the AAPMD, which is like the Collaboration Cures meeting. It's a group of a bunch of different organizations coming together. Really interesting stuff coming out of that. That'll change your perspective on dentistry for sure. But Eva was kind enough to come on and be my co-host on this. Eva's great. It was my first time meeting her in person after years and years of interacting on social media and, digitally, which was so fantastic. She's a blast and smart chick. And so thank you so much, Eva, for being my co-host. But this was with Dr. Stasha Gominak, and she is amazing. This will be my third time with the podcast hearing her, and I take back so much. Honestly, guys, I think you need to apply this. Think about yourself when you're listening to this. We're talking about vitamin D. We're talking about gut health. We're talking about a lot of vitamins, actually, and sleep. And I personally got tested for my vitamin D levels tested, and it was so bad. So bad. I got tested.
The sunny state that you live in is so bad.
See, just
how much worse is it for me in Washington?
Exactly. And, to be honest, to be fair, my first test was almost a year ago, because that's when I heard about this. And that's December. So, in the winter months, we tend to have less anyway. But I was a 17 and I think you need to have between 60 and 80 on your test. So I was very, very low, and she's got a workbook and everything on her website. She'll go through it all. I've tried to follow that. I just tested myself about a month ago. I was up to 40. So I'm getting there, but don't just start taking vitamin D and thinking you're going to be great, because she really breaks down, you got to find that threshold for you and yourself. And if you have sleep issues, maybe it's not just sleep apnea, but vitamin D has a lot of bearing on our sleep. And B5 was fascinating. So, nerd lovers, you're going to just die over this one. Or nerds out there, you're going to love it. You really are. So thank you to Eva and Stasha, and enjoy this episode.
Hey, Michelle.
Yeah.
It's time for the interview.
Oh, but I had something else to say.
We need to let the experts talk now.
Fine.
So listeners, I have a guest co-host. Actually, you have heard her on the podcast, Eva Ramsey, Master Ramsey. I always confuse them.
Eva Masters Ramsey.
There we go. Thank you. You were on our student roundtable, and
yes.
Long-time listener, second-time guest.
Yes. And I finally got to meet Michelle in the flesh.
We've been Facebook friends for quite some time, and we actually just met today.
She does exist.
I do have skin. I am a person. And we are interviewing somebody that I have met one time, but I've seen you lecture twice at this point. Dr. Stasha Gominak. Nick. Which one am I?
Gominak. You said it
Gominak.
right.
Okay, good. I love to butcher last names like it's my job. So welcome to our little dental hygiene podcast. You are not in dentistry formally, or by education. What do you do?
I'm a neurologist. Now I'm a sleep coach.
Oh, and what brought you into the world of dentistry?
Thank you for asking that. I was picked up off the internet by dentists first. So
Really?
I fell into an area of vitamins and sleep somewhat by accident. I'm very, very passionate about sleep. And then it turned out to lead me towards vitamins. And my colleagues were rather dismissive, to say it in a gentle way, of my ideas. And so I just put my ideas and what I had published on the internet, and some sleep dentists picked me up. And then I started lecturing at conferences that sleep dentists gave. And then I began to learn a huge amount from the dentists and realized that everything they were doing should be moved into my sleep coaching as well. And that anatomy and brain chemistry and physiology are intertwined. So I've learned as much from them as I hope they have from me.
I'm sure. And why would you go from your neurologist and brain to gut and vitamins and like what was that?
It was a series of accidental steps. It's all clinical observation, which now that I've been in this for 15 years, we over the last 20 years have tended to minimize the importance of clinical observation in patient care, which I think is wrong. I think as long as we cure people, we can feel confident that we know what we're doing. If we're not successful, then the real biology is happening in front of you, and the patient's observation of their body is really the truth. My little made up stories about it are made up. So that is something that I never would have understood, nor did I ever see that until I got into sleep. And because everyone has left sleep for last, we're just beginning to understand a little bit about it. And unfortunately, it's an area that we don't know much about, but is now epidemically wrong around the globe. So I started 15 years ago with a headache patient. So about half of my practice in neurology was daily headache sufferers. And they are mostly young, healthy females who have just had a couple of kids. They don't have medical problems. They're working out. They want to have a healthy life. And despite everything going well, as far as their doctor's concerned, they have daily headache. And one of those patients said, I've just spent 2 years with you. I've tried these 4 medicines. My headaches are still terrible. I want a sleep study because my husband says I snore like a train. And importantly, she was kind enough to come back after I expressed a lot of disdain about the idea because it wasn't reported. She actually came back with a CPAP mask having been used, and her headaches were gone. And I was totally blown away by that. She turned out to have sleep apnea, but then I began to do sleep studies on all of my daily headache sufferers, including little kids. So over time, I had a whole bunch, like 1,000 sleep studies in young, healthy males, females, teenagers, children. And they turned out to have something really different than sleep apnea. They didn't stop breathing. They didn't have drops in oxygen. So it was hard to then point to the airway. They just did not get into rapid eye movement sleep. So why would this normal looking 32-year-old have no REM sleep or a half an hour of REM sleep? Why would this small child who's 8 years old have no REM sleep, have leg kicking?
Almighty. Yeah.
So sleep study after sleep study with no clear explanation. And frankly, it wasn't until my sleep study reader, who's a pulmonologist, pointed out to me, gee, have you noticed that your population, that's a rather unusual population to being at the time. So this was in about 2004. So at the time, people weren't sending young, healthy people for sleep studies. They were sending elderly, fat males.
Yeah.
So he said, your population is a lot different. Have you noticed that they just don't have any REM sleep, or they have no REM, they have REM apnea? And I said, no, I didn't notice that because it's not on the report. And he said, yeah, you're right about that. It's on the second page. And I went, oh my God, I've been looking at all these reports, puzzling over this person has apnea, but this one doesn't. Why are they both cranky and can't remember and are depressed? And then I started to learn how to read the sleep studies, and I realized every single one of them had the same findings, but there was no explanation. And because there was no explanation, the reporting physician reading the sleep study wouldn't put it on the report because they didn't know what to do. I mean, as a patient, when I say, gosh, Jacqueline, you have no REM sleep. Well, what would Jacqueline say?
Okay.
Can I get my REM sleep back? What's wrong with me? Why don't I? And no one had an answer.
Right.
So I have all these sleep studies. I don't know what to do. I'm using a lot of CPAP devices when I can. I've got little kids on CPAP. But if they don't have apnea, I can't use CPAP. That doesn't make any sense. So now I'm using a bunch of sleep medicines, and they aren't great. And I sometimes have to argue with the patient about taking them because I was taught not to use them. They were taught not to take them. Yet I have lots of evidence that their sleep is abnormal. And all I have to offer is sleeping pills, which is pitiful. And I actually know that it's not going to regenerate normal sleep, but it's the best I have. And in retrospect, I realized that a lot of the medicines that I started using when I was first in practice were categories of medicines that were used originally as antidepressants, and they help sleep. They change the neurotransmitter mix, and they help sleep. And that's why they help the headaches, but they wear off. By now, I'm 4 or 5 years into this.
Do you have a question?
Well, I'm just kind of shocked right now. It's divine intervention maybe why I'm in this room, because you're explaining exactly me. I have terrible REM sleep. I have migraine headaches.
Yeah. They're directly related. So by the time I'm finishing 4 or 5 years, and I'm now doing sleep studies in every single person who hits the door, because by the second or third year, I'm thinking, here's a little kid or a teenager that I'm about to put on a second epilepsy medicine. How come I've never thought of whether this child has a sleep disorder that caused their genetic epilepsy? They don't have a brain tumor. We've done all the imaging. We know that their cousin has epilepsy. Why didn't I think that, maybe the sleep deprivation is making their brain manifest this genetic weakness? Why haven't I done sleep studies in little kids with epilepsy, with adults with epilepsy, with adults with tremor, with adults with staggering, vertigo? In fact, now that I think about it, every single person who comes in my neurology room has a genetic disease. They no longer are presenting to a neurologist with tuberculosis of the spine or polio or XYZ infectious disease. They don't have syphilis anymore. Therefore, the neurologic illnesses that come to see me are a genetic cause for daily headache, a genetic cause for vertigo, a genetic cause for Parkinson's, a genetic cause for tremor. That means if I could make their sleep better, I don't need to whip out these medicines we've derived. And not only that, there are lots of these diseases I don't have any medicines for. Staggering diseases. Wow. Does that mean that all these people have sleep disorders? Yeah. Once you have a sleep study and you have all of the results, you realize, does this mean that all of these illnesses really started when this person stopped sleeping normally? Yeah, that's what it means. So now I'm 5 years into it and I have this pitiful CPAP device and I have medicines. Okay. And I'm using the medicines and they're working to some extent. The CPAP is working. They all wear off. So I have a CPAP user who's thrilled with their response when I first start. 4 years later, he's coming back saying, I loved my CPAP device. Now I apparently wake up because I'm not conscious of this, but I take it off at 3 a.m. Something is making this person get more paralyzed in deep sleep at 3 a.m. And my pulmonologist says to me, gee, did you notice that your patients have REM-related apnea? And I say, no, what's that? And he says, well, they only stop breathing when they enter REM sleep. And I say, well, why? And he says, well, we get the most paralyzed of all in REM sleep. And I say, we get paralyzed? Are you kidding me? That sounds really, really dangerous. And he says, well, that's true. And I think, I'm a neurologist. Why don't I know that we get paralyzed in sleep? And now I start to read about it. So by the time the guy is telling me this CPAP device is not my friend anymore, I'm now thinking of his apnea as being, golly, we have to turn up the pressure on his CPAP because the disease that's making him too paralyzed is getting worse while I'm just looking at the electronic readout. I'm looking at this stupid thing, how many apneic events. He's telling me that he doesn't feel good anymore, but I'm missing the point. Every single one of these people is getting paralyzed too much or not getting paralyzed enough. Oh, could that be why all these women who have daily headache grind their teeth and are wearing these appliances at night? And I didn't even have oral appliances for sleep at the time. All I had was grinding devices. But I thought, oh, well, they're just grinding their teeth because they're not paralyzed enough. And we get into this phase of REM sleep. In REM sleep, if you look back at the anatomy in the brain of how we manage paralysis, paralyzing your airway is pretty dangerous. That means we only do that in REM sleep, and we only do it under very tight supervision. Your brain is watching the air moving through your nose. It is watching to make sure you swallow appropriately so you don't drown. That is what is allowing you to get paralyzed and wake up as a human being the next morning. This is millions of years old. The dinosaurs had to sleep and swallow their saliva and keep their airway open. That means this part of the brain is called the reptilian brain because it's been that way forever. It's never failed before because the ones that failed will not be here. Yet it is failing now around the globe in multiple populations around the world in all age groups. So I'm looking at the paralysis anatomy. I'm thinking now, this is really fascinating. If we think about it in terms of, oh, there's a single place where we get paralyzed. It's in this reptilian brain. We could actually explain apnea and kicking and bruxism coming from the same exact place. Little tiny stripe of cells that are called the nucleus reticularis pontus oralis caudalis. And it's called that because it starts at the top with oral, bulbar, that is actually mouth and neck. Then it goes chest, diaphragm, which is split out as a separate set of cells. And then it does everything else. And we paralyze below the neck in slow wave sleep earlier in the night. We paralyze mouth, throat, only in rapid eye movement sleep. And we paralyze the chest and diaphragm. Uh-oh, you just died. What does that imply? People who have the reading of central apnea on their sleep study are so screwed up that they are probably going to die soon because they actually get completely paralyzed and their diaphragms and their chest wall stop moving. That's not an airway problem. That is a big, big deal. And that's happening at the brain level. That also implies that sudden infant death syndrome, those kids do not die while you're sitting there in their plate chair feeding them Cheerios. They die while they're sleeping. That means that this brainstem area is being seen as deaths and illness, and we're not watching it. So here's what happens. 5 years into it, I have a young 18-year-old who sleeps 10 hours. She doesn't have insomnia. She sleeps for 10 hours. I have a sleep study in front of me that shows her sleeping for 10 hours. She wakes up 35 times an hour to light sleep. She never gets to deep sleep. As far as she's concerned, she's asleep.
Sleeping. Yeah.
She's asleep for 10 hours.
Mm-hmm.
She never gets to deep sleep. She's 18. She's beautiful. I've given her verapamil. Her headaches are gone. She comes back and says, I'm happy my headaches are gone. But you know what? I'm so tired. And I'm looking at her sleep study, just freaking out because I think she's going to be back in here in 10 years with a stroke. This is a fatal flaw. What on earth could be wrong with this perfect looking girl? And she says, well, can you help me with this fatigue? And I say, no, I don't know anything about it. Did your doctor do your fatigue or your tired labs? And she says, what is that? I go, I don't know. I mean, that's not what I do, but let's do thyroid and B12. I guess those are the ones I'm supposed to do. And B12 is really, really low. Because I have been reading all these wacky journal articles about those cells that are making us paralyzed. And I'm reading these physiologic studies where these crazy guys have got these little tiny hair-like needle electrodes in a single cell, a pacemaker dopamine cell that's firing at 3 cycles per second. Since the day we're born until the day we die, they're pacemakers. They keep firing all the time. They can't possibly say, hey, take it for me, buddy, because I'm B12 deficient. I can't do this repair. They have to keep firing because they're running our internal clock. I've been reading these wacky articles and then I think, oh, she's B12 deficient. I have some of these patients who are elderly who have atrial fibrillation and their pacemaker cells are malfunctioning. Could that mean that the pacemakers in the brain and the pacemakers in the heart are both B12 deficient before all the other cells? So we're seeing them present with something that's B12 deficient throughout the whole body, but there are some special things about it. So I start to do B12 levels, my first entrance into vitamins. I learn a lot about the fact that B12 has all these legends about it, but they're really wrong. It turns out you need to supplement the B12 every day, that you can do it orally. And when I'm giving shots, they get 2 good nights of sleep and 28 bad ones. And apparently for the first time, I ask every single person I meet, even at cocktail parties, how are you sleeping? And then they tell me, and then I listen to the answer. Okay, so one of the things that happens is I realize that I'm doing these B12 levels, but about a month later, one of my patients says, my doctor did my vitamin D level, and she gave me vitamin D and my wrist pain went away. And one of the things that's been puzzling me all along through these last 5 years is some of these people who are on CPAP come back and say, you know what? My headaches are gone. And you know what else? My knee pain is gone. And I would go, what? Why would this thing blowing air up your nose make your knee pain go away? That doesn't make any sense to me. But I look back at the sleep study and sure enough, this gal has got these leg movements. She's walking. She has periodic limb movements of sleep. And it turns out they're periodic because you're still walking. So she has these repetitive movements that are only of the legs. So many of my headache patients had body pains that would almost always be from the waist down. So as I'm thinking about this, I don't know how to answer it, but I start thinking, maybe these movements below the waist are just as dangerous, but they manifest not with headaches, but they manifest with knee pain or ankle pain or, some hip pain or back pain. So this woman saying to me, gee, my doctor did my vitamin D level and she gave me vitamin D and my wrist pain went away. I thought, wow, maybe this will help this other thing. I don't have any explanation for it. So then I start, since I'm drawing blood, I'm not doing sleep studies anymore. I'm drawing blood and I draw blood on everybody who's in my office from August to December for the reason of saying, gee, could these vitamins be low in the background in someone who has abnormal sleep that we can't explain? So by about the 3rd month, and just by accident, I'm drawing the vitamin D levels in Texas between August and December. Mm-hmm. So it should be, even though I know nothing about vitamin D, when the vitamin D should be at its highest.
Right.
Every single one of them is low. And I'm like, this is weird. Oh, the B12 is low in some. And it turns out to be the really, really sick ones who have daily headache and fibromyalgia and their bowels are all screwed up. They're the sickest. But the one that's constant in the background is the vitamin D. So The next thing I do is I'm just asking, okay, are you taking any vitamin D now? No. And so I send out these lab tests that say 1,000 IUs a day. I'm recommending 1,000 IUs a day because that's what the FDA says. I don't know anything about it. And then in December, 2 guys come back in the same week. So this is in the 4th month. And they both say the same thing. I've been wearing this stupid CPAP torture device for a whole year and my headaches weren't better. But last time I was in here, you sent me that little note that said, take 1,000 IUs of vitamin D. And in 3 weeks, my sleep got better and my headaches went away. And I'm like, wow, 2 guys tell me that in the same week. At that point, I know nothing, but I go to the literature and I put in vitamin D and sleep and nothing comes up. There are 0 hits on the PubMed search engine. But then the next thing I put in is vitamin D in the brain. And what pops up is a set of articles by a guy named Walter Stumpf, who has actually published an article about the nucleus reticularis pontus oralis caudalis. Like, who would even know about this nucleus? He has published an article that shows that there are vitamin D receptors in this place that runs our paralysis and sleep and in the parts of the brain that run the time clock that are right next to it. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing. If he had already not put together the context, it would not really have made any sense to me. But he has now over 300 articles since 1980 showing that vitamin D links our ability to hibernate. So it means that we sleep more in the winter and we gain weight in the winter. And he's already showed that it affects our fertility. Could that be why all my women with daily headache have polycystic ovarian syndrome? Why they have thyroid disease? Why they have gallbladder disease? Yes. He's already published all these articles. He's published an article in the 1980s about vitamin D and psychiatry, vitamin D and depression, vitamin D and seasonal health. And I'm looking at all this going, if he's published all these articles in the last 40 years, why don't I know about it? So I call him up and I say, you don't know me, but luckily he's retired. So he takes my phone call and I say, look, I have some kind of weird questions for you. I don't know anything about the science of vitamin D because I just stumbled into it. But I just have this clinical observation where I have 1,000 people. I have their sleep studies. They're all vitamin D deficient and they have insomnia or all these other. Has anybody written about vitamin D and sleep? And he says, no, but that makes perfect sense. That's how we hibernate. And I'm like, okay, let's talk and let's put together a clinical paradigm where we can publish this. So Walter and I published an article in 2012 that was in Medical Hypotheses because it's clinical observation, but it's a lot of clinical observations. And it's in a population that has no other place to go. We don't have any good treatment for insomnia. When we go to sleep meetings, everybody just dodges around that view. Nobody has anything good to say. Therefore, I don't have anything good to give them except for these drugs that it's obvious it's not fixing them. So we published this article about 1,000 people. We show that the vitamin D level is easily felt by the patient. I don't have any investment in this. Nobody makes money off vitamin D. In fact, it's free. You walk outside it without sunscreen, you make it yourself. So I don't have any investment in wanting to gain anything from it. I just want to be able to tell my patients, gee, your vitamin D is 22. That might be linked to your sleep. Let's take it up tonight to a level of 62 and see if you sleep better. And sure enough, my patients come back and I keep asking them the same thing. How do you sleep? And now they say, I'm sleeping great. And I go, oh, wow, cool. Let's send you down for a vitamin D level. And I'm too stupid to even have them do it before they come in because I don't really know what's going to happen. But my patients are able to tell me that they're better. And then we go through a very bad span where we're all have vitamin Ds that are too high and our sleep falls apart like crazy as soon as it gets over 80. And that's what we use to say it's 60 to 80.
Okay. So that's where our levels should be if we go get blood work.
Yes.
60 to 80. All right.
So how do you suggest that they supplement?
This is why I actually have an entire website dedicated to this, because it turns out that there are no studies that I've been able to find that report what the correct dose is for every single human. And this is a hormone. That means for every single hormone, too much and too little both screw us up. If you use your mindset and what you know about hormones and apply it to D, you will understand this. If you use the vitamin word, you will not understand it. The reason why the vitamin word was used was because rats are nocturnal. Duh. They don't go out in the sun. So, and it's kind of confusing because even the animals that go out in the sun lick their fur or preen their feathers and get the vitamin D that they make in their feathers from oil that's in their feathers or in their fur. They take it orally. So it is pretty confusing.
So can I just clarify or make sure I understand like the reason we're talking rats, because that's what we were doing testing on?
The reason why we're doing testing on rats is even more complicated than that. So we like to do testing on rats because humans don't like them.
We don't have an emotional bias.
Exactly. If we liked them, we would not torture them in experiments.
Yeah.
The reason why we don't like them is because they're nocturnal.
Yeah.
And because they like us. They follow us around the planet and they sneak into our house while we're asleep and they rustle around and they scare us.
Yeah.
So they actually got to be an experimental animal because of our animosity towards them. But that means in this particular field around sleep, they are unique and different than we are. Mm-hmm. They sleep in a different way. They actually are active at night. They never make vitamin D on their fur because they don't go out in the sun.
So they were calling it a vitamin because they were doing it on animals that were nocturnal.
They were nocturnal animals. In order to become a nocturnal animal, your vitamin D receptors have to be perfectly okay with a very ancient vitamin D, which is called D2, that's made from fungus. So fungus came way before we did. Fungus makes D2. That's why there's D2 in mushrooms. And these animals can only become nocturnal and stay out of the sun like vampires because their vitamin D receptors is perfectly happy with D2. But all other animals, insects, fish, birds, mammals, all make D3.
So you said that you like to think about it as a hormone. So that makes perfect sense to me. So I'm assuming that it would alter other things in the body that would cause the bad effects or negative effects. So could you give us what would be some examples of those effects?
Yes, let me just finish this for 1 second. Unfortunately, family practice is still giving out D2, which is only what rats use. And the human receptors, in my experience, when I gave D2, so the current recommendations for medicine are D2. It's a little green tablet. You do not want to be taking that. It's 50,000 IUs and it's once a week. That is what the American Academy of Family Practitioners is still recommending. That's what I did to some of my patients who had the lowest levels of all, because I couldn't believe that 1,000 IUs would do anything to them. So what they came back and told me was that stuff nearly killed me. I couldn't sleep. I ached all over. I had terrible diarrhea, etc. So first point, D2 is not the same as D3. It never was, never will be. And we should never be giving our patients, we should never be taking D2. And paradoxically, you're much better walking into Walmart and buying what's on the shelf than you are taking that green pill from your doctor. I'm sorry to say. Now, the next question was the last question you had, which is what would happen to me if I take too much? Okay. Now, here's the danger. Every single person needs a different dose to arrive at a specific blood level. It took me literally 2 or 3 years to figure that out. It's not in the literature yet. I haven't published my observations because my office was a regular old doctor's office. I wasn't set up to have generating data. So the difficult part is most of the literature says it's a vitamin, therefore recommends a daily dose. The danger in that is if I take, I'm going to give you an example that's That's a real example, just to give you an idea how difficult this is. And then I'm going to tell you how to do it, because it's really simple to do, but I want you to understand the significance of this. I have a mom that's coming to see me for her daily headaches. I'm teaching her how to do this. She has 3 kids at home, 5, 7, and 9 years old. She just wants them to sleep better so they're healthier. They don't have big physical illnesses. She starts all of them on 2,000 IUs of D, which is not a huge dose. FDA recommends 1,000 IUs. So these are little kids, so she's giving them 2,000. The 5-year-old, and so we have now a starting D level where we've gotten a blood test and we have results. The 5-year-old's result is 22, and she gives them 2,000. The 7-year-old's value is 29. Now, these 3 kids are all same mom, same dad. They have different skin types, maybe, okay? The 9-year-old's level is like 15. So they're all low, but they're all different. She gives 2,000 IUs to each one for a month, and then she goes and gets another D level, because I tell her we cannot assume that even if these are 3 kids that are all related to each other, they all need the same amount. So in the second level, the 5-year-old has gone from 22 to 28 on 2,000. Everything's happy. It's still low, still not sleeping well. The 7-year-old has gone from a level of 28 to 98. Like a huge jump where that level is too high. Then the third kid has gone from like 18 to 42. Now, there are several things about that. One, you can never assume that from the first D level, you know what dose to take. You really don't know. That means you must do D levels. If you're going to try to do this with your kid, you have 2 ways to do it. You can watch their sleep, and you can go really conservatively and be very vigilant about their sleep. And when they finally get to 60 to 80, they'll start falling asleep at 8 p.m. and waking up at 6 and have a smile on their face. And then you better realize that they just went up, and you better go down again. Okay. Or if your kid has challenges of any kind, you really need to do a D level, give them whatever dose you feel comfortable with, and get another value in a month. The reason why you do it in a month is it takes about a month for the effect or the change in the blood level. But you don't want to wait 2 months, because the likelihood of that kid actually taking this every day and being consistent about it and being able to keep it in your head what you're doing goes away as you take longer and longer time spans. So I usually have you do a blood level and check it again in a month. Okay. Now, luckily, over the years, there is now a lab service that will let you get your own D levels done. You go online, you go to ULTA labtests.com, and this is on my website. You sign up, you make an account, you put your zip code in, you tell them where you live. They tell you that 2 blocks down, there's a Quest lab. There are very specific instructions about which D level to get done, because it is confusing, but the correct one that is accurate is only about $39. You go down there and get your lab drawn, and then you get your result in 2 to 3 days. You don't have to go through your doctor. The first time you get a D level done through your doctor, it's usually usable. So even if they're not paying much attention to the technique that they did, if it's low, the newer lab tests are still accurate below a level of 40. So there's a level of complexity here that I apologize for, but in the last 10 years that I've been doing this, the labs are getting so many requests for D levels that they've tried to figure out a cheaper, easier way to do them. So now, instead of using the big $500,000 machine to do the D levels that are accurate, which was what my lab, thank God, was using at the time, they have now moved over to what's called an immunoassay. That immunoassay is not accurate above a level of 40. That means if you want to go 60 to 80 and run this, you need a lab that's accurate, because what we're finally doing is saying, how do you feel between a level of 60 to 80? The immunoassay tends to distort by 10 or 15 or 20 points too high. You will never be able to get this right using the immunoassay. So this is on my website. It's a website that's dedicated to how to dose vitamin D safely and accurately and what you have to do. I recommend that anyone who's listening to this does not play around with vitamin D unless you're serious about it. You can really hurt yourself and your kids by using this. And then there's a whole second piece to what do we do to bring back the microbiome?
So my question, I'm very curious how we mentioned bruxism, we mentioned headaches. So, we're dental hygienists and we're all like, what do we do for those patients? And then I know that there's another factor that I didn't really understand, and that was the link to perio.
Yes. Okay. So once getting into vitamin D, all you have to do is go to a search engine and type in vitamin D and periodontal disease.
Okay.
So the thing that Walter Stumpf had already published was that vitamin D has receptors all over the root of the tooth. So it is the trophic factor that makes your teeth grow in normally as a little kid.
Huh?
And it turns out we're going to talk second about how vitamin D determines what the microbiome of the gut is. And therefore, it also determines the microbiome of the mouth. So that means it's not only about how well your teeth grow in, how well your teeth are set in your jaw, but how well you do in terms of fighting periodontal disease and cavities. So now we know that the microbiome of the mouth determines the amount of cavities you have. So all the little kids that you see whose moms say, I don't give him any candy. How come he has 5 cavities? They all have low vitamin D, and they all have low vitamin D and the wrong intestinal microbiome and the wrong mouth microbiome. Remember, the first thing I said was D allows us to hibernate and gain weight in the winter. It's not a direct relationship to D, the gaining weight. It's the weight gain comes through changing the microbiome. So we now know that the bacteria that live inside us, when we change the population, those little bugs make little chemicals that go up into our nose and make us eat more. They make us gain weight by eating more things that are high in calorie. They make us crave carbs. They make us crave high fat foods. So the microbiome population actually has a lot to do with why the population is not sleeping and why they're overweight. So when we step back a minute, what you want to prevent all sorts of diseases, including periodontal disease, cavities, general health. So autoimmune disease, the immune system that helps us fight off viral infection. Those are all run by, actually, we're walking around with this big cloud of other organisms hovering on our skin, in our mouth, under our armpits. All over us are these viruses, fungi, and bacteria. When they're the right group, we don't get sick. When they're the wrong group, we get really sick in a lot of ways. That means 2-year-olds who have tubes in their ears have vitamin D deficiency that makes them not able to breathe through their nose, which means they are now a mouth breather, which means they have a dry mouth and the wrong microbiome and a whole bunch of cavities. They are actually getting implants at 4 and 5 years old. That's crazy. It wasn't always like that. So we can fix this by giving them a simple combination of D plus B vitamins, and we're going to talk about how that happens. That means when you're looking in the mouth of a child or a mom, you have a half an hour of a captive audience. You can ask them questions. They, of course, can't answer you because you've got your hands in their mouth, but you're seeing their health. You are actually looking at something that is a perfect measure of what their general health is. And you can teach them how to get their D level done, how to use B50 to get their microbiome back. You can send them to a website. You can be introducing the idea that these vitamins are directly related to your periodontal health, and they will help you sleep better, so that once you're sleeping, your mouth is into the phases that allows you to repair these problems. We are actually self-repairing organisms. You get us to the right phase of sleep and you can repair everything.
I also am very curious about the bruxism and the headaches. Do you brux?
No.
I'm like, I could kill someone and like rip the, like it's, yeah, I'm a clincher. Is this clinching? Are we calling clinching and grinding all in that same?
I think they're related to one another. It's kind of a complex area, and I've learned a lot about it from the dentist. My view of it from the neurology was, clenching, grinding is just activating these muscles that are supposed to be paralyzed while we're in REM. Now, there are people who clench while they're awake.
Mm-hmm.
Now, yeah, that clenching is really a very nice measure of the autonomic nervous system tone. So we're kind of getting into something that's a little complex, but that I've learned about a lot from the dentists as I've hung out with them. The autonomic nervous system is a system that handles everything that's automatic. Salivary glands, pupils, how my GI tract moves, how much am I trembling? How does my body react to stress? So we all know about fight flight now. We're really trained that, my experience that my heart rate is now 110 and I'm kind of shaky and I'm clenching usually means that my epinephrine is too high. My adrenaline is too high. Now, what we've been taught for why our adrenaline is too high and how it links to sleep disorders is we've done recordings of what's the level of epinephrine, or what's now in the literature is what's the sympathetic tone. So the sympathetic side is fight flight. That's run by adrenaline. So we all know if I just got rear-ended, I get out of the car, I'm all shaky, I feel like I'm going to poop my pants, I want to throw up. And if anybody looks at me, I'm shaking. My adrenaline level is too high. Because that's so easily visible, and because all our patients with sleep disorders and periodontal disease have a high heart rate, and we are measuring this and we're saying, this must be the stress of an active modern life because everybody's doing it. Then once you get into the sleep disorders, you find, there's a huge body of literature of every single person who has a sleep disorder. It doesn't matter if they have sleep apnea or insomnia, their sympathetic is too high. Okay. I have a total different way of looking at it. The other half of the autonomic nervous system is called rest and digest. It's the parasympathetic nervous system. What if there was a state in my body where I didn't have enough of the chemicals that run the rest and digest side? What if they just went away? That's a concept that no one has ever thought of.
Because you just think they balance each other. Like
they're supposed to balance each other. I mean, I learned about it and I learned the chemicals. Okay, here's what happens to me. I get into this vitamin D stuff. There are some things that don't go away. The three things that don't go away are, one, my patients don't lose weight. I know they're fat because their D is too low, but they don't lose weight. They're exercising, they're doing all these great things, but they're not losing weight. Maybe that has to do with the GI tract. The IBS does not go away. That's really important.
Okay.
The third thing is we all are starting to have terrible pain, including jaw pain. So the vitamin D works for about 2 years. We published the article, and now I'm stuck with this miracle chemical that I know can hurt us. And at the end of 2 years, it stops working. They're not sleeping. Their pain is worse. I have this peculiar butt pain where I can't sit down to see my patients. At the end of the day, my butt hurts. I've been sitting on the same butt for 55 years and now it hurts and I have no explanation. I can still run. I didn't fall down on my butt. There's no explanation for it. So I am sharing this experience with my poor patients who are coming back and saying, I came to see you 2 years ago for my headaches. Now my headaches are coming back. No, I got my D level done last week. It is 65. So don't you dare tell me it's my D level. And oh, by the way, my legs hurt so much, I can hardly walk. Is this something you're doing? And I'm totally paranoid because I don't really know. This is at a frontier, but I'm kind of suspicious that it is something that I'm doing because I don't have any other reason to have this peculiar butt pain. I'm not about to go to my doctor and say, will you MRI my butt? Everybody else is getting MRIs of everything, but it doesn't explain it. So one of my patients comes in with a book. She gives me this book. It's about another vitamin, God forbid, called Pantothenic Acid. It's B5. It's a completely forgotten vitamin. And I start down this other path, not because I know anything, but because I'm desperate. I can't sleep. They can't sleep. Something has happened, and it takes 2 years from starting vitamin D to get there, which is really weird.
Your D levels are within that 60.
They're perfect, but the effect has worn off.
Got it.
That kind of makes me think, is something happening? We all know that our sleep got better. Could that mean that as we're sleeping better, we're making repairs? And have I forced my patients into a deficiency state in something else? Why would they have that? I have 2 women who have daily headache who come in within a month of each other saying my hands and feet are burning. And I think, uh-oh, I don't have a clue. How about those Astros? What do you think? I try not to get engaged with the conversation because I don't know. I don't know why. They have B12 already on board. I'm a neurologist. In fact, my specialty is neuropathy. And I know nobody walks in with burning in their hands. They may well walk in with burning in their feet, but burning in the hands and feet is very unusual. And it was always B12 deficiency. I know their B12s are perfect. Just around that time, this woman walks in with this book about B5. And the reason why she brought it to me, it was a book about rheumatoid arthritis, autoimmunity, and B5. And she says, I give them 400 milligrams of B5 and their pain goes away and their sleep gets better. And I think, I really don't want to do any more vitamins, but you know what? I don't think I have rheumatoid arthritis, but my butt really hurts and my sleep is terrible. And so I run in and I get the 400 milligrams of pantothenic acid. But as I'm there, I think, I haven't read anything yet about the Bs. And the only thing I remember from medical school is if you give one B, you should give all of them. So I buy B100. B100 is 100 milligrams or 100 micrograms of every single B. Oh. So I'm trying to get all 8 Bs. I don't even have any idea why. I don't even know there are 8 at the time. I just go through until I find something because it's dismaying to go through 5 different rows of B complex. When you pick them up and look at the back, they're all different. I've just experienced what it's like not to know anything about the dosing of vitamin D and to have all the dosing recommendations in the literature be wrong. So now I'm extremely paranoid. And so now I go back and for 1 week, I recommend 400 milligrams of pantothenic acid, which is what it says in the book, and B100 to about 40 people who have bad sleep, terrible pain. And by the end of the week, I have restless legs morning, noon, and night. Oh. Which is my sleep disorder. So I realized within 5 days, I just recommended this regimen that's going to be wrong to 40 people, and they're going to come back and yell at me. And that's exactly what happened. So 1, they all come back and use the same phrasing. They say, this 400 milligrams nearly killed me. I was so agitated and I couldn't sleep that I stopped it after 2 days. A couple of them fired me. They yelled at me and I said, I'm sorry, but it's not in the literature. In fact, what is in the literature is there is no pantothenic acid deficiency because it is in every food. If it's in every food, then every time we ate 3 avocados, we would not be able to sleep. So 1, that is everywhere in the literature and it's blatantly wrong. 2, the gal in the book says 400 milligrams and I walk down to the drug emporium and I buy 400 milligrams off the shelf. She says that her patients got better with this. What's up? My patients did terribly. Could this mean the only thing that's different about this population is their vitamin Ds are 60 to 80? And they're acting like you add this vitamin to somebody who has a D level of 60 to 80 and they get buzzed up. The next thing that happens is I stop the 400 milligrams of pantothenic acid. I'm on B100 and my butt pain goes away in 2 days. And I start to feel fabulous. I sleep well. I have no pain when I wake up. And I'm like, this is so bizarre. No one's going to believe me. They already think I'm a whack job. I'm not going to bring it up. My patients come back and some of them are mad at me, but some of them are really happy because they say, look, this 400 milligrams, this nearly killed me. But you know what? I stopped it and I stayed on this B100 and I feel the best I have in 20 years. I'm sleeping perfectly. I have no pain. My pain went away in 2 days. And I say, that's what happened to me. I couldn't believe it. Wasn't that weird? These vitamins that we have sitting innocently on the shelf can either take away your pain or they can cause terrible pain depending on what the vitamin D level is. That's peculiar. No one has ever written about this. Now, fast forward about 5 or 10 years, because I've spent 10 years trying to understand this. There is a beautiful science behind why this happens. Vitamin D, as I told you, is in this nucleus that runs our paralysis. It turns out that what vitamin D does when it hits that receptor is it makes the enzyme that makes a chemical called acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is the neurotransmitter that runs the parasympathetic nervous system. And oh, by the way, acetylcholine is the chemical that allows us to be focused and to concentrate during the day. So once I find that article, and there's only one, but it was written in the 1980s, using the observations that Walter Stumpf had made, another group said, Walter showed that there were vitamin D receptors here. What does that thing do when it hits that receptor? And then they published that article. Once finding that makes acetylcholine, it turns out that the enzyme that makes acetylcholine uses B5, which becomes coenzyme A, as the raw material to make acetylcholine. So not only did it look like these were synergistic, like if you add a big whopper dose of B5 to someone who already has a lot of D, you get a totally different response. And the person feels it immediately. That is a fascinating thing. What that suggests is normal humans walking around the planet, all animals, in fact, have only one source of B5. And it's secreted from their bacteria in their small intestine on a minute-to-minute basis. It's the same level in the day as it is at night. It makes you focused. It makes you able to concentrate. It does that all day long. And then around 9:30 or 10, a little switch flips, and that same exact chemical makes you sleep. So the same thing that makes you awake and alert in the day makes you sleep at night. That is a concept that doesn't exist in medicine today. That chemical not only allows you to make the transitions between the phases of sleep, but it also paralyzes you in sleep. And the dose and the level is very picky. You have to get it just right, or you move all over the bed, you clench your teeth. So going back to your original question, it turns out when you don't get the acetylcholine right in the day, you also don't have it right at night. Therefore, you can actually clench during the day because you have fight, flight dominating. So you're constantly grinding. In fact, that's what we see in the little kids when we give them amphetamines to make them be able to concentrate in school. When you get the dose too high, they start to grind. So that's the same thing in humans. When your acetylcholine isn't right during the day, you get clenching during the day and grinding at night. If you step back for just 1 minute, what this means is we actually have a biology that evolved around a foursome of bacterial species that were here for literally billions of years before we ever came. Those 4 guys make 8 B vitamins. They make all these chemicals because they can. And they hang out as a foursome and they feed each other these bees. So there's a whole beginning body of literature that recognizes, there's only one article so far aside from mine, that recognizes that this foursome of healthy bacteria not only does a million things for us, but they make 8 B vitamins. That 8 chemical mix is what they want to grow back. So here's what I find. I'm into this B100 stuff. I'm taking it. I start to read about the bees and I think, my patients with burning in their hands and feet sound an awful lot like these patients I just read about who had pantothenic acid deficiency. So I pull the references from that original book about pantothenic acid and arthritis. She has references that go back to the 1950s where they have these weird experiments where they give a blocker of pantothenic acid, and within 2 weeks, they have burning in their hands and feet. They have a funny puppet-like gait. Their belly hurts and they can't sleep. And I think, this is what's wrong with those women with the burning in their hands and feet. I have induced a B vitamin deficiency state because they were using up their B5 stores. Well, that implies one, all the literature that says that we don't have stores of the water-soluble vitamins is wrong. And there are actually scientific articles that have already proposed that. So B5, B6, thiamine, vitamin C, all have body stores. So what I did was I made them sleep better until they made enough repairs that they actually used up all of the stores in their body. And then they started to present again with sleep problems because now they're B5 deficient and that takes away their sleep. The thing that I was worried about was, if they didn't change their diet, which they didn't, these are all smart people. Why did they have IBS. My husband hands me this article that's from the Economist journal. It's a journal about making money. They have 3 pages about how we all have the wrong bugs in our belly and explains all sorts of things like, the bugs in your belly are wrong. You're going to get fat. They do a gastric bypass on a mouse. They take the bugs from that mouse's belly. They put it in a second mouse. The second mouse loses weight. So my patients didn't lose weight because they don't have the right bugs in their belly. And I just read an article that shows that every single one of these B vitamins has a food source and an intestinal bacterial source. Wait a minute. That implies that it's always been those 8 B vitamins from these 4 bacteria that's been running our body all along. Now, I'm not that interested in making the microbiome come back, but I am really interested in what are the right doses of those 8 chemicals. If I can screw somebody up in 5 minutes by giving them 400 milligrams, who should I trust to figure out what the dose is? There are no human beings that are publishing this because they didn't think of it yet. They didn't record how much of these bees are being pumped out by the bacteria in the small intestine. It's really hard to figure out an experimental paradigm that will tell us that. But you know what? Maybe those bacteria really what they want is some D because they've always needed it. And I just gave a bunch of my patients B100. What if there are some of those foursome down there, but there are piles of poop in between each other? So they used to hang out as this happy, healthy foursome. And A makes thiamine that B can't make, and B makes riboflavin, and they trade vitamins. I just gave a bunch of people D, and now I just flooded their GI tract with B100. What if I'm right? And the happy foursome grows back. You know what's going to happen? They're going to come back and yell at me again because all of a sudden, without them knowing it, they're taking B100 by mouth. Their bugs are back, making the normal amount, and we have double the dose. And then their sleep is going to fall apart and the pain's going to come back. Oh, no. And that's exactly what happened. So 3 months later, some of my patients were smart enough to listen to what I said, which was, I'm thrilled that your sleep is better and your pain's gone. But if it comes back, I want you to stop this B100. Okay. I don't know if it's going to work, but I have this theory that that's what those bugs wanted all along, is a combination of these two. I stayed on it, unfortunately, 4.5 months because I was too stupid to listen to my own advice. And I just thought I had a very long flu. So I start at 4 months to have this terrible achiness and feel like I'm a million years old when I wake up in the morning and I'm very stiff and I walk around like, wow, I feel really stiff and old. And one of my patients says to me, you gave me this B100. I started that and I felt like I was about 90 years old when I wake up in the morning. I broke it in half and I'm taking B50 and it went away. And I think, she's telling me that B100 is too big a dose for her and her bugs are not too bad. Oh, I feel like that in the morning. I wonder if my bugs are back. Sure enough, I stopped the B100. Boom. All of it's gone in a day. It sounds pretty complicated. It is pretty complicated, but all you have to do is get your D level 60 to 80, take B50 for 3 months, and magically your bugs will be back. You have to keep your D above about 40 to keep the bugs happy. They aren't that picky. They aren't as picky as our brain is about the sleep dose, but you have to be attentive to never letting it go below 40 again, and the bugs will stay happy from there on. The bugs play a huge role in our sleep. They make chemicals. They make a lot of chemicals. Thiamine, for instance, that I don't even talk about very much, is a cofactor to make acetylcholine and dopamine. That means all 8 of these bees have in the background been making the chemistry that makes our brain run correctly. Getting those guys back is pivotal. So if you only remember one thing from this podcast, it's that you should never give vitamin D by itself. You should always take B50 with it and pay attention to your dosing, because I have numerous patients now that have been on vitamin D in small doses for 10 years. And they're seeing me because their D finally got good. They've been getting their levels done every year because their doctor's giving them 2,000 IUs. And last year it got up to about 60. And then their doctor said, oh, maybe we should stop it for a while, but didn't say anything else. And they're seeing me because they have burning in their hands and feet and terrible pain. And they've just been told they have diabetes and a neuropathy, and they don't. What they have is a microbiome that has not been able to keep up with supplying the B5 they need. They start on B50 and it goes away in about a week.
Burning hands. I'm curious about burning tongue syndrome.
Same thing. It's B5.
I mean, I personally suffer from it, and I know a lot of our patients do. And we see that on Facebook all the time. My patients have,
especially autoimmune disorders.
Yeah.
We see it more and more as more D is being used.
So my question is, how can we tell our patients how to navigate the waters as far as vitamin selection? Because I know that's kind of an industry that's not regulated very well. And like, what are some things that we can tell them?
Great question. Here's what I discovered. I had a population that was already on a bunch of drugs. Okay. They're not seeking a natural approach. They're just listening to me babbling about stuff. My biggest struggle was to get them to take something every day and to pay attention to the dose that I told them. Okay. So I didn't spend a lot of time trying to figure out the different types of vitamin providers. What I was mostly interested in was trying to get them to make sure it was all 8, what the doses were. And oddly enough, I've now been giving vitamins for 15 years, and none of my patients complain that they poop out the vitamins looking the same as when they swallowed them. Okay. Now, I also happen to be a neurologist who sees patients in the hospital. This is a long answer, but it's an important one. It's not that they made up this whole idea that you can't dissolve cheaper vitamins. They didn't make that up. In fact, what happens is the woman who's gone for a gastric bypass is telling her bariatric surgeons that she's seeing the pills in the toilet. What they don't realize is her primary disorder was a D deficiency, and vitamin D runs the acid production in the stomach. The vitamin D has 3 areas where it has direct control over the stomach. Both of the sphincters, so the sphincter that's tight and keeps the acid from washing up into the esophagus. Oh, does that mean that is why we have reflux? Yeah, that's why. The other one is the sphincter that keeps the acid from going down in the duodenum, the next part of the small intestine. And the third receptor is where we make acid. So as soon as you understand that, my patients were all dialing up their D way before we got into these other vitamins. So if you think back a little bit and say, oh, our body was designed to be able to dissolve raw meat. Uh-oh, there's something badly wrong with those women who are doing the bariatric surgery. They can't dissolve a vitamin. Oops. Can they dissolve steak? No, they stopped eating steak a long time ago. So My patients, without me really realizing at the beginning what we were doing, now have very tight sphincters. Their reflux is gone. Their acid production is perfectly fine. So frankly, they can take any kind of vitamin. That means that the whole industry of, we make a special kind of absorbable vitamin was based in reality. But in actual fact, there's a huge industry now where you can make very good money branding your own vitamins that are made in the same factory that makes the CVS and Walgreens vitamins. So in my experience, what you should concentrate on is not what does it say on the front, like who's the owner and making the money, but what's on the back. What's the dose? Are there all 8? And I have very specific recommendations on my website. It's not that you can control everything. It's that you really need to know a little bit more and you have to see it through this context to understand it. Okay. The next piece that I'll throw in right here is H. pylori that causes ulcers only grows in people who don't have the right acid environment. There are now articles that show that you can make H. pylori go away by supplementing vitamin D. Because as soon as you do that, you bind up the sphincters, you make this bag that's perfectly designed to have a very low pH, and it kills the H. pylori. So all the stuff that we've been complaining about on the stomach level, which is really coming in reflux from the esophagus, it's not designed. What does that imply? It implies that esophageal cancer, Barrett's esophagus, reflux that's eating away the enamel on the teeth, those things are all existing together. We're calling them different things, but they all have a joint cause in the background that you can fix.
You've thrown out some things like, so burning tongue, like that's, I think what's blowing my mind right now is that we have so many patients suffering from this and everyone's like, I don't know what to do. I think it's dry mouth, whatever. So burning tongue, the acid reflux side of it, because we talk about that and decay. I mean, bruxism, like what are some other like real indicative clues that we can be like, you need to get this checked? I mean, because I honestly think that this is a very big conversation that might be very difficult for us to have with our patients. I think one, we could fix ourselves first, and then that's always a good way to get into with our patients. But what are some very indicative signs that we can be like, I think you need to go talk to somebody about this?
This is very complicated material. Okay. So even if you listen to it once, on the third go around, if you listen to it the third time, you'll get some other points. Okay.
From you, so
now,
it's good.
I have worked on this for 15 years, so don't be dismayed if you can't get the whole thing. The good part about it is I'm now doing this for 15 years and over 7,000 patients, and the concepts are the most important part. It's not the same as we used to be, which is I'm the doctor, I'm going to tell you the dose, and you shut up about whatever it is that happens to you.
Right.
That does not work. So I have an entire website that has workbooks that will guide you through what you need to do for a whole year. It has a bunch of information that tells you about the various diseases that are related and how they're related. I will soon be making a workbook that is specifically for pregnant moms and kids, because the dosing is very similar. The levels are the same, but it kind of takes you through an easy way. I really don't want my kid to have blood draws. I want them to just be able to go outside and sleep fine and not have to go to the doctor. Okay. So there's a bit of a difference in how you would do it based on what's wrong with your child. If they just are still getting up and coming into your bed and moving all around like a crazy topsy-turvy machine in your bed, but they don't have any medical problems, then you want to be able to watch what happens to their sleep. And I give you the guidelines. I actually give you back what would have been normal sleep in all humans before 40 years ago, before we moved indoors. And you have to have that information. You have to know, even though your kid has never slept normally, the normal really is they fall asleep easily at 8 p.m. You can pick them up off the couch or out of the back seat of the car and they don't wake up. And you put them in their bed and they're still asleep. And then they wake up with a smile on their face, giggly and fun to be around at 6 a.m. You have to put that idea in their head. So I have a website. I have workbooks. What I want for the dentist and for the dental hygienist is to be able to point out these ideas, be able to understand the complexity and the fact that it's worth learning about the complexity, because the ultimate outcome is I don't ever have to have a cavity filled again. If you get this right, we are designed, if you go back to Weston Price and you start with his ideas that primitive societies had perfect teeth, perfect arches, perfect development, his claim was that when the foods of commerce arrive, what he's really describing in tropical climates is the foods of commerce come with missionaries that tell them to put clothes on. So what happens to the Hawaiians and the Maori is that they've got these big black dresses on now. So and they have big buildings and they no longer live outside. If you look at the Inuit people who still have dark skin but are living at the far north, he's right. They took away raw liver that they used to eat from the seals that they killed and raw blubber that used to be a staple of their food, and instead went to canned foods. What he saw was a change in the arch development, increase in cavities, really big changes in the way the facial development was. He was absolutely right. And it goes back to not being able to breathe through your nose. So your early development is about not being able to suckle correctly because you can't breathe through your nose, and not being able to tolerate breast milk because you have the wrong microbiome. It turns out that the microbiome makes enzymes that we don't have that helps us digest things that are in mom's milk. That suggests that we evolved together. If you go back and tell all these ideas, it takes more than an hour and it's hard to get your mind around it. That means I would introduce the ideas and say, look, we're learning at my practice how to use this workbook. I'm doing it myself. Here's a workbook for you. We can do it in parallel. It takes a bit of time, but my experience with my clients has been that they want to teach the rest of their family how to do this.
Yeah.
So one, I am actually going to try to put together courses for professionals like dental hygienists or myofunctional specialists who aren't big money makers, but are just as important in the care of the teeth and the development. So I can have courses where I can present this to those specialties where we're not charging as much as we do for the dentist. I am currently giving 1.5-day courses around the country to dentists, but I'm going to start with the help of Michelle and Eva, a subclass that will be exactly the same instructional stuff, but will be tailored toward your subspecialty, how to use it in your practice, how to use it effectively so that you're not getting blowback from your dentist about taking too much time giving these concepts. And also, if you happen to be a dental hygienist working with a dentist who doesn't think vitamins are relevant, you have to learn the ways to handle that within your practice. Okay.
Yes.
I've gotten really good at this about how the dentist who has just gotten into this dental sleep and vitamins gets blowback from the MDs that are referring to them.
We're the masters of that.
Yeah, I know, right?
It takes you do have to develop a certain technique, and that is a part of the course.
We usually just hit them over the head with the
Or just shame them on the podcast.
them. No.
Shaming works to some extent, but they have to have an open mind before they're willing to be shamed.
Right.
So it is something that you can't really do in 10 or 15 minutes. What you can do is introduce the idea. You can give them a card that has my website, or you can just say, Dr. Gominak or something like that. I'm the only Gominak in the entire world because it's a totally made up name. If you just put in something that's kind of like that and vitamin D together, my website jumps up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Or if you say vitamin D and sleep, mine's the only website that has those two on it now. You are seeing my stuff trickling into other websites that'll start to talk about it. But probably the first one that'll show up on Google will be mine just because it's hit the most. So I would recommend that you learn these ideas yourself. Don't try to gain mastery of you and everybody in your practice. Now you've had a little door that's opened. You will see over time that you will start to put together, oh my God, this kid is on Ritalin And that's why he's on Ritalin and he has 18 cavities. Oh, he just got in the hospital with a pneumonia at age 6. Why the heck would that happen? You're going to start putting together things that we haven't put together before. Every child who has a lot of cavities has an immune system that's not right. And it's from the same reason. There is a lot of literature about vitamin D at a primary immunocompetence standpoint. It came out of the first thing that was described in neurology was MS. Because MS is all about the T cells, the vitamin D effects on the immune system through the T cells. But there is huge amount of literature now. In the last 10 years, there are like 35,000 articles about vitamin D and the immune system of the gut, vitamin D and the immune system of every part of the body. So vitamin D stands alone. But if you look at the second piece, which is B5 not only makes acetylcholine, it also makes cortisol. So all the women who come in and say, I have adrenal fatigue, they're not just whiny pains in the rear. They really do have a lower cortisol level. Their adrenal glands don't have the raw materials to make cortisol. That means that hormone that runs our immune system, that allows our immune system to go up and down all the time based on other factors, that's been screwed up in parallel. When you add these Bs and you get the microbiome back, you are really reconstituting the immune system.
Well, is your mind blown?
Yes.
Very much, right?
Very much.
Where can people take a course? What is your website?
www.drgominak.com.
Okay. And that has a list of your courses where they can find you and they can get that workbook.
Yes. I have 2 ways that they can be in touch with me right now. The first is that they can just send me an email. I will then refer them to, if you didn't see it, there's a little menu tab that says work together.
Mm-hmm.
You can schedule a half an hour getting to know you appointment. You can talk about, at my level of illness or lack of, should I just have the workbook? Or do I need to work with you personally? Working with me personally is a whole year of commitment. It's a bit expensive. And that means that it's not there for everyone. It's not right for everyone. I want everyone on the planet to have access to this, no matter what their financial status is. So the workbook is what allows you to do that. And then I also have a section that says for clinicians, and it says clinicians, not doctors, because anyone who sees clients on a regular basis who is concerned about their sleep or their health can do this. You really just have to be motivated. Mm-hmm. I have now thousands of lay people who do not have an MD degree that now know how to do this.
And I think that's one of the great things about hygienists is we actually have a lot of time with our patient to develop that rapport.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And they trust you. And that they know that you're interested in the biochemistry of what's wrong with them and that you are doing it yourself, because the irony is every lecture that I give, 2/3 of the people in the room have this. Probably 9/10 of the people in the room have this.
And we're not just cleaning teeth. We are managing the microbiome.
Absolutely.
In the mouth. This has been fascinating. Thank you very, very much for this time and education. And I hope everybody does visit your site and also listens to this a minimum of 3 times. And we welcome you back anytime you have something to share with hygienists, because we have very engaged people that want to hear this knowledge. So anything else you want to tell us? How finding you, we got that, but anything else that you want to plug, so to say?
When we're doing this interview, we're also at a conference that has made it their cause to collaborate across subspecialties.
Yep.
I think that medicine needs to drop this whole false impression. I'm a doctor and you are somehow intellectually inferior and socially inferior to me, because it doesn't benefit anyone. Yeah. It doesn't benefit anybody who works in a doctor's office or a dentist's office. It doesn't benefit the patient. This whole move away from what originally developed, I think, was that doctors were rich. In order to go to school, you had to be wealthy. The population, they weren't educated. This is totally different now. Every single person who has free education in the United States has access to every single bit of scientific information that a doctor would have. When I went to school to become a physician, I was paying them money because I needed to use their library and they needed to teach me things. Those are valuable things to learn from other person's experience. But in actual fact, now we all enter the doctor's office or the dentist's office with the same level of potential education. That means what my clients want is to be enabled by the information so they can take care of themselves so they won't need doctors. I completely support that. The thing that I learned as I went through this is no longer what I'm doing now with sleep is not about the doctor tells you what to do because the person is the only person living in that body. They have to be enabled by me saying, you don't have to do what I tell you. I'm going to tell you what other people told me. I'm going to give you a set of informative facts. I'm going to give you a context in which to think, but then you're going to use it in your body to make you better.
Brilliant. Yes.
That is as important as the biology.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it goes back to what you were saying in the very beginning when you were discussing how your clinical experience has made you come up with a lot of these concepts. So I just wanted to remind people, that a lot of times we throw out this word evidence-based medicine, evidence-based dentistry, but I think a lot of times that gets lost in translation a little bit, meaning that we're relying solely on literature, but it's also clinical experience. It's also patient autonomy. All of those things have to go into that equation.
Absolutely.
I love the fact that you said that because I really bristled at evidence-based medicine. And as I got more and more clinical experience, I realized these are earth-shattering new discoveries that I can't get my colleagues to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
That was very upsetting. I've just spent the last 3 years figuring out ways to make them listen. That piece is just as important.
Yeah.
And I think that the key to that is, and this is what one of the things we do in the course, is coming at it from a point of view, not of arrogance, which is what I was trained in. I know something that you don't. Ha ha. And I'm going to teach you, or I'm not going to teach you. I'm just going to lord it over you. Instead, we should really come into the discussion with a viewpoint of collaboration and compassion. This is another person who doesn't know this. They feel uncomfortable because they're supposed to know it. They're supposed to know everything. They're supposed to, by definition, be the dentist or be the doctor. They're the source of all important information, and they don't know this. That means when we have a discussion and we're still within this unfortunate paradigm is I'm in a position where I'm considered a lowly dental hygienist talking to a dentist, revealing something that they really want to know, but they don't know that. My ability to gather my strength and present this in a way that won't be confrontative is what will succeed. That takes a bit of practice.
I think that also goes along the lines of the patient and the clinician aspect as well.
Yeah.
Patients don't like to be treated like children.
No.
And we definitely have this patient-centered care approach that we are all trying to wrap our head around, that you are not the only expert in the room. They're the expert in themselves and their life and their body and their feelings and what's happening to them. And you are the expert in some other things, but it's not that you're supposed to be dictating this patient, telling them that they have to be this way or do these things or brush their teeth 2 times a day or they have to floss right before bed. Like do something between your teeth. I don't care when the hell that happens in this day. What works for you? And I think we are very big proponents of that. And I really do appreciate you bringing up that, we are all on equal grounds as far as potential knowledge, because I know she and I didn't go, we're hygienists because we want to be hygienists, not because we couldn't be dentists. And I think that is a thing that a lot of people forget.
And I'm in academia now, so I boss the dentist around.
Yeah. But it's nice. And I do appreciate that because we are the person that is spending so much time with that patient and to bring value to our education and what we're doing to manage not letting a cavity happen in that mouth. And I actually, just before we came up here, I told Eva, I was like, I don't think this would ever work in a private practice. I'm in an outreach program where I volunteer and I'm seeing very low income. I'm seeing migrant workers. I'm seeing people of all walks of life in there. And they sit in my chair and I said, how do you feel about like never having a cavity again or having an extraction? Because that's my goal for you. I don't ever want you to sit in that dentist chair again. And they're like, what? And I was like, are you cool with that? Because if you are, I have so much that I can teach you, but I just want to make sure you're cool with that. Cause I don't want to tell you anything you don't want to do.
Yeah. I think all of this goes along the lines. I mean, we're trained to focus on the prevention model rather than a treatment model. And dentistry kind of tends to go down that treatment model. We make money. Yeah, exactly.
How we make money.
This is really about that. This is a transition zone where and by the way, if I'm found killed under questionable circumstances, and then the drug industry came after me, I was pretty paranoid at the beginning because I was like, why is all this written down, but no one's talked about it? Is there some cover-up scheme?
Yes, there is.
So one of the things that's weird about it is every single human being would rather not see a doctor or dentist. Mm-hmm. And there really is a concept that we were created or formed or whatever, how we got here, we were perfect. And that means we can achieve not needing those interventions. Who doesn't make money then? Well, there are a lot of people who don't make money then. But still, what we would want as individuals is that.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been amazing conversation. And thank you again for your time. I know we are like, this is why Andrew's not on this podcast because he would have stopped me like 45 minutes ago. But thank you so much, Dr. Gominak and Eva, for being my co-host.
Thank you.
Well, I'm sure everyone is just like going straight to her website, downloading or figuring out where they can get their lab test. If not, tell me where you live. I'll come slap you. No, because it's something that we all need to be mindful of. And then you're going to really start to hear your patients. I've already probably this weekend told 3 people to go get their tests for vitamin D3 because they were like, I got a headache all the time. I sleep so poorly, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, it might not be the problem, but it very well could be. And that's not a standard test that we get, and blood work, panels. So awesome.
I'm still just like blown away that people still come on our show and give us that amount.
Seriously.
Of amazing, like really like high quality. It's not like, hey, let me give you a little like fluff and then come listen to me live or whatever. Like it's like they give you the stuff. I'm like, wow. So thank you, man. I
think anyone who gives us the stuff is the speaker, the educator that understands that it doesn't take one podcast for people just to get it, right? I just said at the beginning of this, I've listened to Stasha or Dr. Gominak 3 times, and I'll listen to this podcast a 4th time, and I'll probably take notes. And so it's like watching a movie, right? Like you see it in the movie theaters, you thought it was amazing. You'll probably go see a sequel, those kind of things. But if you watched it at home, you're like, oh crap, I totally forgot that was even a scene, or I don't remember that line. And then the more you watch it, like how many times do we watch movies and TV shows over and over?
Especially really good ones. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. So I feel like that's speakers who have amazing content. They believe in their message, and it's not fluff, because I think if it's fluff, then they don't want to come on and give it.
Expose themselves and to all the thousands. Yeah. No, that's a good point.
Right. It's there in perpetuity. So we appreciate you guys for just coming on. And listeners, my gosh, like you guys are amazing. You listen to a download or a dental hygiene podcast. That blows my mind. And we at the beginning thought we'd have 12 listeners. Like there's only a few people that actually want to learn. But you guys are great. The podcast numbers continue to grow. Thank you so very much. And if this thing resonated with you, share it. We want to push this message out there as much as we can. We can't do it alone. It's you guys that's really kind of spreading the word. So thank you so very much for that.
And if you guys are looking for something else to listen to, we have the Dental Podcast Network. There's channel 1 and channel 2, 10 more dental shows to listen to. It sounds daunting, but they're just cut up into little 20-minute bite-size segments that you can listen to on your way to and from work. Something to keep you motivated in between your A Tale of Two Hygienists podcast.
Yep, exactly. And thank you to PDT for sponsoring the CE portion of this and also CE Zoom. PDT is Paradise Dental Technologies. They make amazing instruments, not just hygiene, but also surgical. They've really branched out. But for us RDHs out there, they have just high quality products and instruments, sharpening tools, and also everyone that works there and owns it and runs it are some of the best humans around. So we appreciate you supporting us and we adore you guys. And CE Zoom, you're great. Anything else you can think of that we are forgetting?
I think that's pretty much it. I hope everyone has a great week, though.
Yeah. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram, on Facebook. You can head over to our website at taleoftwohygienists.com. Oh, we have a giveaway. We have a giveaway.
I was going to mention that earlier.
You hear this podcast. I think you'll have a few more days to go enter that giveaway.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Thank you to all of the companies. This is over $2,000 worth of products that one lucky winner will win. So go to ataleoftwohygienists.com/giveaway, or you can text ATOTH to 66866 and enter to win. And we are going to pick a winner on December 15th. So what are you waiting for? Go enter ASAP. And you can email us at ataleoftwohygienists@gmail.com as well. Thank you guys for listening to another podcast. See you next week. Good luck being a hygienist.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, y'all.